Thanks for joining me today for chapter 4. I'm very excited to get into this. This is literally one of my favorite chapters in my book. There are other ones that I just love, but this is definitely one of my more favorite ones. Before we get into it, if you haven't caught up on the character introduction and details over Cinis and Cinere, I would, just so you can, not only do you get to see really cool illustrations that I've made, but also you get details that you won't really get in the book, and it really does help get a more field of view of when I'm either doing this for the audiobook, or if you get the ebook in the future and the hardback as well in the future. Those will always be there. I mean, I have bigger plans for some of those illustrations, especially when I can meet someone who can do them for me. But it just kind of brings everything in, if you will. So, without wasting too much time here, let's get right into it. I'm excited. I'm sure you could tell. Let me get a little drink of my tea. Get a blanket. Get yourself some snacks. This is gonna be a good one. This entire chapter, I'm gonna just let you know, is essentially a fight scene. So if you're into those epic, gritty fights, you're in for a treat, my friend. Okay. You will never pass me, demon, I said, tilting my hilt towards him, slowly to not make it obvious, as if I would care if he did notice. Almost finishing the transmutation circle below me, he started to make his way through the courtyard, making a mess of the place. I've never seen a demon before, only read about them. It had no clear motive, yet its face was teeming with instilling fear, and its eyes withered the soul with its inferno. It had 4 eyes, 2 on each side, and its face... on either side of its face, and the head of some sort of fox with no skin. Its body was of massive size and vigor. The flesh of the beast was a burning smolder, and horns of great magnitude shedding ash from all the guilty souls it tends. The demon makes its way over. I step upon the wall, up to the doorway that leads to the 2 stairs descending. I look down at my prey. You tread this plane no longer. I fall gracefully and change my field, feeding all lux in my body into my sword. Turning my body mid-fall to fall with my feet against the face of the wall, it cracks in the weight of my stance. I make flight forward, jetting through the air almost faster than light itself, for the demon moves on a plane beyond the normal sight. We clash in the middle with 1,000 shimmers of our movements are recognized outside of our fierce battle. In the fray we clash, claw to courage, bending reality's fragile fabric due to our powerful blows. My sword unable to penetrate its defiled skin, and his attacks evaded by my sheer accuracy and power. Dead flowers around us in the tall beds of gray stone began to burst into flame as the heat of the air began to rise, turning some of the stone to molten rock. I kick off of his abdomen, leaning towards the edge of the molten slag, splashing it in a wave of debris. I make contact with the ground. Without wasting time, I power my transmutation circle and begin absorbing the light from the space around me to be able to pierce through the unclean skin of the Marquise. In a raging blow, the beast was already in mid-kick to my mid-side, making contact with me, sending me launching into the fairgrounds of the opening. The flower beds of burning smoke ash spewed black smoke into the sky. The sight of it made the house look like a damned place. I hated that. Blood started to run from my nose. Coughing some blood up, I wiped it from my face with a smile. My hair, coming loose from its crystal clip, dangling in the midst of this horrid being, making its way to me. I make my stance again, this time breathing harder. Light begins to bend at my whim, as it cannot escape my powerful draw of the sword. The beast jumps with unnatural speed and smashes the ground, sending a giant exploding molten line, ripping the ground and spearing the space around it with shards of obsidian. I jumped to evade, but was caught by one of the shards just as I landed. I began to run the premise of the opening away from the carnage, and then turning sharply. I head to him to keep his focus on me traveling at an incredible speed. The air around me condenses, and I jump in a leap with an uppercut, and as I slide into the swing, the air behind me catching a bright flame. I chant my sigil to activate, and the flame became as one like a hot star. The demon's body, being lit by the holy light, hits the ground again, sending a herd of fury strikes. As the strikes are tearing through the ground, my speed and power could not be matched for the strike. It was negated by my flow forward. I swung, sending such a powerful blow that the very area forward in its path was burned and cut. It was so strong that it forged a 10-meter wide cut through the ground and partially into the forest on the other side. He narrowly evades the blast, but loses an arm that he quickly grows back. I came to a sliding stop and peered to my right to the house and make eye contact with him, walking in the middle of him and the house. I was panting. The energy from the sword was a lot to focus on. Jim taught me how to wield the sword that she made and had to go through rigorous training to even be in the same room as it. Holding it as an equivalent as escaping an event horizon over and over repeatedly. The focus and arcane it used was significant and would mean I have to move quickly or it will drain me. Blood was starting to flow from the wound of the obsidian debris, but I couldn't take it out for it was too close to my heart, and the wound would kill me even with my healing abilities. The being snickered in the most unsatisfying way, so loud it made the trees blow in its wake. Its eyes were even more terrifying than before, and started to motion a sigil in the air. This was it. I have to make my move now, or it's going to make a mess of things here, and if that doesn't kill me, then the ladder of choices will. I kneeled down in an attempt to catch my focus. Breathing heavily, I grip my fist around my sword, sending the blood between my fingers to a drip. When the first drip of blood drops, I call upon my sigil once more to make one more charge. I raise my hand and hold my sword steady behind me, for it was proud to feed once more, even if it meant oblivion. Blood began to drip from my eyes as they began to turn completely black. A smirk formed on my face, and I spoke with great vigor and prowess. You chose the wrong day, demon. You will fall this day. I will send you back to despair herself. A drip of blood falls from the hilt of the sword. Time stood still as the demon and I started to completely be consumed in the wake of our powers for an ultimate showdown. The light from all the fire and flames of the once brilliant flower beds fed my stance and started to even absorb the light within the radius of our fight. The entirety of sight was gone, and it was only he and I preparing to send each other into oblivion to find our way to our own hells. A glaring flash pulsed just beyond my sight, and he was right in front of me mid-strike with his open claw, tearing the darkened air, missing me as I swung upward with a single strike. The strike beamed upward, sending the top of the demon's body into a blazing fury, turning even his demon skin into an ash. The environment instantly became visible again because the amount of power that was absorbed was put into a single strike. The thick, black storming clouds above resembled a giant hole from the blast. The lower part of his legs remained, falling slowly to the ground. Using both my hands, I produced a sigil to fully dispose of the rest of the demon remains. The glow from this alchemy was always so beautiful in its own sense. My mother's books explained a lot about them, but until this very moment have never actually had to utilize their abilities. I arose in a weakened state and looked around me at the absolute hell that the court and fairgrounds of the mansion looked like. The tree line from where I struck the ground and into the forest was still steaming with a glow of the wood recovering from its destruction. The sky, moving its clouds around the wake of the strike that brought the demon down, started to cover with the raging dark storm above. I couldn't even walk because I kept stumbling into the giant cavernous lines that the demon made with its hellish strength. There were only two questions on my mind at the moment as I bled a trail up to the house. One, what was that red beaming blaze that flickered? Surely it was the summoning of the demon. And two, if so, why did this happen? The more I thought about the possibilities, the more I speculated how the times were changing. I started to lose my sight, and the weight of my sword became too unbearable. I walked to the towering doors of the house that we called home, and in that moment, I started to have memories of childhood. I fell to my knees and almost shed a tear. Falling forward, the doors opened to my contact on the door and crawled my way in, whispering her name, hoping she would hear. Just as my gaze was fixed on the long hallway, I saw her. My angel presented herself to me as she made her way down the hall. Light beaming these once happy halls with the grace it deserves. Just as she made her way to me, my eyes fixed on my sister Jem, raising me with a simple gesture of her fingers. We floated to the kitchen where she lay me down, and for the first time she spoke to me. I almost didn't hear it because I hadn't heard her voice in such a long time that I didn't even recognize her own tone. I turned to her as I was bathing in the pool of blood that was gathering in the crevice of my neck, and asked her if she said something. She smiled, and with that I felt the sharp pain of the obsidian shard being removed, along with all the other shards that I never even knew I had. Her eyes started to glow, and her black, tight dress began to rise with a healing light. My sight was going in and out, but I reached in my back pocket and pulled out the wrappings from the cave. Jim was already back in the kitchen when a part of the wrapping started to unravel the mysterious artifact. The green blaze filled the room, and immediately the blazes were almost healing me just by being in their presence. Jim shot over to me with amazement and inspected the wand herself, with her soulless eyes studying it. A book came flying into the room, and the pages started turning and stopped on a page. I only saw the title to the book as I leaned up from the blood-bathed table, and it was my father's. So curious that it may be possible that we missed something in his writings. To be honest, I never even knew that may be in those books until we started facing troubles in our everyday life. Even after all that damnation that occurred in the court of our mansion, it still reeked like demon. I made eye contact with my sister and opened my mouth to ask if she had anything to do with this, and before I could, she was hugging me in glee. I didn't know what to do. She hasn't held on to me since that day in the closet. She took the wand into her grasp and put it in a flask and corked it and put it on one of her shelves in the kitchen. The green inferno was kept within its contents, yet seemed so elegant in nature. I stepped forward, trembling a little bit to the ground with my hand on the counter as I stood weary, and asked her, "Jem, will you help me to my chambers, little sister?" Smiling, she did as I asked and took me with ease to my bed, taking care of my clothes, all while cleaning the tears and stains from my clothing. When she was done, she actually sat next to me as I fell asleep. She didn't say anything at all, not even a glare in my direction. She seemed to be deep in thought. I fell asleep soundly that night in high health, and knowing that my sister watched over me, sleeping for once was nice. Just as I fell deeper into a slumber, I murmured, "I love you, sister. You are my world." All right. Thanks again for joining me for Chapter 4. Chapter 5 is going to be awesome, and we're going to see the true light from what is going to become of this wand that Jim sought so much to take in Flask. So we will see. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed reading it and writing it. Such a fun scene between an ash demon and Grim, and the amount of power that they consume in the fight is just wicked. So thanks again. If you really enjoyed it, please stay in tune for Chapter 5, where you get to meet Alita. I kind of went over her coming into the chapter, and we are going to see in full light exactly what Alita has to do with Grim and what Jim has to do with Alita. So thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all the good stuff. Thanks.